upon regaining consciousness and being released from the punishment, Kaliya got back his life force and the working power of his senses. With folded hands, he humbly began to pray to the Supreme Lord Krishna. My dear Lord, I have been born in such a species that by nature I am angry and envious, being in the darkest region of the mode of ignorance. Your Lordship knows well that it is very difficult to give up one's natural instincts, although by such instincts the living creature from one body to another. It is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita that it is very difficult to get out of the clutches of material nature, but if anyone surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, the modes of material nature can no longer act on him. My dear Lord, Kaliya continued, you are therefore the original creator of all kinds of modes of material nature by which the universe is created. You are the cause of the different kinds of mentality possessed by living creatures by which they have obtained different varieties of bodies. My dear Lord, I am born as a serpent, therefore by natural instinct I am very angry. How is it then possible to give up my acquired nature without your mercy? It is very difficult to get out of the clutches of your Maya. By your Maya we remain enslaved. My dear Lord, kindly excuse me for my inevitable material tendencies. Now you can punish me or save me as you desire. After hearing this, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was acting as a small human child, ordered the serpent thus, you must immediately leave this place and go to the ocean. Leave without delay. You can take with you all your offspring, your wives, and everything that you possess. Don't pollute the waters of the Jamuna. Let it be drunk by my cows and cowherd boys without hindrance. The Lord then declared that the order given to the Kaliya snake be recited and heard by everyone, so that no one need fear Kaliya any longer. Anyone who hears the narration of the Kaliya serpent and his punishment will need fear no more the envious activities of snakes. The Lord also declared, if one takes a bath in the Kaliya lake where my cowherd boyfriends and I have bathed, or if one fasting for a day offers oblations to the forefathers from the water of this lake, he will be relieved from all kinds of sinful reaction. The Lord also assured Kaliya, you came here out of fear of Garuda, who wanted to eat you in the beautiful land by the ocean. Now, after seeing the marks where I have touched your head with my lotus feet, Garuda will not disturb you. The Lord was pleased with Kaliya and his wives. Immediately after hearing his order, the wives began to worship him with great offerings of nice garments, flowers, garlands, jewels, ornaments, sandal pulp, lotus flowers, and nice eatable fruits. In this way, they pleased the master of Garuda, of whom they were very much afraid. Then, obeying the orders of Lord Krishna, all of them left the lake within the Jamuna. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 16th chapter of Krishna, Subduing Kaliya.
So we can go on to the next chapter?
Yeah, 17.
Would you like to do?
Okay.
Extinguishing the forest.
17, extinguishing the forest fire. King Parikshit, after hearing the chastisement of Kaliya, inquired from Subduing Goswami as to why Kaliya left his beautiful land and why Garuda was so antagonistic to him. Subduing Goswami informed the king that the island known as Nagalaya was inhabited by serpents, and that Kaliya was one of the chief serpents there. Being accustomed to eating snakes, Garuda used to come to this island and kill many serpents at his will. Some of them he actually ate, but some were unnecessarily killed. The reptile society became so disturbed that their leader, Vasuki, appealed to Lord Brahma for protection. Lord Brahma made an arrangement by which Garuda would not create a disturbance on each half moon day. The reptile community would offer a serpent to Garuda. The serpent was to be kept underneath the tree as a sacrificial offering to Garuda. Garuda was satisfied with this offering, and therefore he did not leave. Kaliya took advantage of this situation. He was unnecessarily puffed up by the volume of his accumulated poison, as well as by his material power, and he thought, why should Garuda be offered the sacrifice? He then ceased offering any sacrifice. Instead, he himself ate the offering intended for Garuda. When Garuda, the great devotee carrier of Vishnu, understood that Kaliya was eating the offered sacrifices, he became very angry and quickly rushed to the island to kill the offensive serpent. Kaliya tried to fight Garuda and faced him with his many hoods and poisonous sharp teeth. Kaliya attempted to bite him, and Garuda, the son of Tarksha, in great anger and with great force, deserving the carrier of Lord Vishnu, struck the body of Kaliya with his effulgent golden wings. Kaliya, who was also known as Kudrushuta, son of Kudru, immediately fled to the lake known as Kaliya Daha, underneath the Jamuna River, which Garuda could not approach. Kaliya took shelter within the water of the Jamuna for the following reason. Just as Garuda went to the island of the Kaliya lake, or snake, so he also used to go to the Jamuna to catch fish to eat. There was, however, a great yogi known as Shobari Muni who used to meditate within the water there, and who was sympathetic with the fish. He asked Garuda not to come there and disturb the fish. Although Garuda was not under anyone's order, being the carrier of Lord Vishnu, he did not disobey the order of the great yogi. Instead of staying and eating many fish, he carried off one big fish who was their leader. Subari Muni was sorry that one of the leaders of the fish was taken by Garuda, and thinking of their protection, he cursed Garuda in the following words. Henceforth, from this day, if Garuda comes here to catch fish, then, I say this with all my strength, he will be immediately killed.
This curse was known only to Kaliya. Kaliya was therefore confident that Garuda would not be able to come there, and so he thought it wise to take shelter of the lake within the Yamuna. But Kaliya's taking shelter of the Subari Muni was not successful. He was driven away from the Yamuna by Krishna, the master of Garuda. It may be noted that Garuda is directly related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and is so powerful that he is never subjected to anyone's order or curse. Actually, the cursing of Garuda, who is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam to be of the stature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, was an offense on the part of Sobari Muni. Although Garuda did not try to retaliate, the Muni was not saved from his offensive act against the great Vaishnava personality. Due to this offense, Subari fell down from his yogic position and afterwards became a householder, a sense enjoyer in the material world. The fall down of Subari Muni was supposed to be absorbed in spiritual bliss by meditation, is an instruction to the offender of Vaishnavas. When Krishna finally came out of Kaliya's lake, he was seen by all his friends and relatives on the bank of the Yamuna. He appeared before them, nicely decorated, smeared all over with chandana pulp, bedecked with valuable jewels and stones, and almost completely covered with gold. The inhabitants of Vrindavan, cowherd boys and men, Mother Yashoda, Maharaj Nanda, and all the cows and calves, saw Krishna coming from the Yamuna, and it was as though they had recovered their very life. When a person regains his life, naturally he becomes absorbed in pleasure and joyfulness. They each in turn pressed Krishna to their chests, and thus they felt a great relief. Mother Yashoda, Rohini, Maharaj Nanda, and the cowherd men became so happy that they embraced Krishna and thought they had achieved their ultimate goal of life.
Hare Krishna. Balaram also embraced Krishna, but he was laughing because he had known what would happen to Krishna when everyone else was so overwhelmed with anger. On that occasion. Being so pleased by Krishna's return, Maharaj Nanda began to give many cows and much gold in charity to the Brahmanas. While Nanda Maharaj was thus engaged, Mother Yasoda simply embraced Krishna and made him sit on her lap while she shed tears continually. Since it was almost night, and all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, including the cows and calves, were very tired, they decided to take their rest on the riverbank. In the middle of the night, while they were taking rest, there was suddenly a great forest fire, and it quickly appeared that the fire would soon devour all the inhabitants of Vrindavan. As soon as they felt the warmth of the fire, they immediately took shelter of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although he was playing like their child. They begin to say, "Our dear Krishna, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, our dear Balaram, the reservoir of all strength, please try to save us from this all-devouring and devastating fire. We have no shelter other than you. This devastating fire will swallow up the whole forest fire and save them." This was not impossible for Krishna, because he is unlimited. He has unlimited power to do anything he desires. This ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 17th chapter of Krishna, extinguishing the forest fire. Hare Krishna.
Should we discuss or keep reading? newly grown leaves of trees whose flowers resembled peacock feathers. They were garlanded by those flowers and decorated with saffron chalk. Sometimes they were dancing and singing, and sometimes wrestling with one another. While Krishna danced, some of the cowherd boys sang, and others played on flutes. Some bugled on buffalo horns or clapped their hands, praising Krishna. Dear brother, you are dancing very nicely. Actually, all these boys were demigods descended from higher planets to assist Krishna in his pastimes. The demigods, garbed in the dress of the cowherd boys, were encouraging Krishna in his dancing, just as one artist encourages another with praise. Up to that time, neither Balaram nor Krishna had undergone the hair-cutting ceremony. Therefore, their hair was clustered like crow's feathers. They were always playing hide-and-seek with their boyfriends, or jumping or fighting with one another. Sometimes, while his friends were chanting and dancing, Krishna would praise them. My dear friends, you are dancing and singing very nicely. The boys played at catching ball with bell-shaped fruits and round amalaki. They played blindman's buff, challenging and touching one another. Sometimes they imitated the forest deer and various kinds of birds. They joked with one another by imitating croaking frogs, and they enjoyed swinging underneath the trees. Sometimes they would play like a king and his subjects amongst themselves. In this way, Balaram and Krishna, along with all their friends, played all kinds of sports and enjoyed the soothing atmosphere of Vrindavan, full of rivers, lakes, rivulets, fine trees, and excellent fruits and flowers.
Back to Jagannath.
Okay. Once while they were engaged in their transcendental pastimes, a great demon of the name Pralambasura entered their company, desiring to kidnap both Balaram and Krishna. Boy, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he could externally, he received him as a friend. Oh, my dear friend, he said, it is very good that you have come to take part in our pastimes. Krishna then called to understand that he was being carried away from his friends by a demon who intended to kill him. Immediately, he struck the head of the demon with his strong fist, just as the king of the heavenly planet strikes a mountain with his thunderbolt. Being stricken by the fist of Balaram, the demon fell down dead, just like a snake with a smashed head, and blood poured from his mouth. When the demon fell, he made a tremendous sound, and it sounded as if a great hill were falling upon being struck by the thunderbolt of King Indra. All the boys then rushed to the spot. Being astonished by the ghastly scene, they began to praise Balaram with the words, "Well done, well done." All of them then began to embrace Balaram with great affection, thinking that he had returned from death, and they offered their blessings and congratulations. All the demigods in the heavenly planets became very satisfied and showered flowers on the transcendental body of Balaram, and they also offered their blessings and congratulations for his having killed the great demon Pralambasura. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 18th chapter of Krishna killing the demon Pralambasura.
I was thinking first time I visited Vrindavan, I was picked up at the bus station in Mathura by Guru Das, who was living in the construction building of the temple, Krishna temple, with his wife. So he picked me up at the bus station. He had an ox cart filled with all kinds of supplies, taking it out to the site. So I just got up on the front with him, and we started moving out of Mathura. So I said to him, well, how will we know when we come to Vrindavan? And he said, you'll know. I said, okay. So we went along a little while, maybe 10 or 15 minutes more, and all of a sudden, we hit it was like a veil, like a curtain. We just passed through something. And immediately, I picked up cartels and just started chanting. We passed into an ocean of ecstasy. It was just like you could cut it. You could feel it passing into it, like you would pass into a breeze or to a wind or something. You could just feel it. And we crossed a line. It was like a line that we crossed. And as soon as we got the front of the cart, where I was sitting, got in the line, immediately the hair stood on end, and immediately I grabbed the cartel and started chanting Hare Krishna. I never experienced anything like that. And that was entirely different than the previous experience I had when I was going from Buffalo to New York to visit the temple, the storefront. We were driving down, the Buffalo trip is about 8 hours. So we were approaching New York City. We were about 20, 25 miles away from New York. And I was sitting in the back of the car. And all of a sudden, we passed into, we crossed a line, and we passed into a sea of I could only describe as abject ignorance. It was like just as much of an effect, or the opposite effect, of when I later would be going to Vrindavan. It was passing into the mode, the atmosphere of the city of New York. And we passed into it. I looked at the person next to me and I said, "Did you feel that?" He said, "Yes, I did." And once we drove in a little further, it wore off. But then later, this was before I went to Vrindavan, I'm just now calculating how the difference in atmosphere was. So completely, it was like, there's no way that you can even make a comparison between the mode of ignorance and the feelings of passing into Vrindavan at that time.
So you didn't grab your cartels?
No. I almost wanted to go back, and I didn't want to go any further. It was like entering into an ocean of, and it completely surrounded us very quickly. So I just had to keep going because we were going to visit the storefront. But it's such a, it was so powerful. It was like, you could feel it. You could feel like it was pushing on you when you moved into it. It was like some force that you had to move into it. Whereas the feeling of Vrindavan was a lot different. It was something, an embrace, an ecstatic embrace, a different atmosphere, completely spiritual atmosphere. And we're in this atmosphere all the time here in this material world. It's much worse than when I was visiting in 1969 to the storefront. Much worse now. But we get used to it. You see, we get used to it. We get used to the lack of Krishna consciousness. When we go out and we drive somewhere, we should always be conscious of the lack of Krishna consciousness, because nobody in all those cars is even aware of Krishna. And all those buses and all those trucks. And back, like Srila Prabhupada said, back and forth, day and night. And nobody understands the situation. So, talk about feeling of absence of Krishna. One way to be aware of that is to understand how he's absent from the consciousness of the people all around. They go about their business as if Krishna didn't exist. Like that. It's amnesia. And I keep remembering Srila Prabhupada's wonderful example about the finger. He said you can cut your nail and there's no pain. But if you cut a little further down, there's pain. The fingernail's part of the finger, and he said this is also part of the kingdom of God. But it's a place where you have no feeling for Krishna. Just like that nail, there's no feeling of it. You have no, it's amnesia. It's like amnesia, like everybody has amnesia. See? And so Srila Prabhupada gives us the great gift that we can wake these people up by our presence, by our going, by being around, and just somehow conveying something about what we've carried with us, some Krishna consciousness. There's no other way. By wandering about, they'll never awaken. It's not going to be by accident. So it's just struck me. And we're in the atmosphere. When we're reading these things, we have to understand, we're not in the space-time coordinates of these people. We are allowed to sit here and hear and participate in these pastimes by sort of almost like eavesdropping. It's like we're allowed to be present. It's not that we're fixed in an ordinary time and space configuration here. It's like we are allowed to enter into a transcendental atmosphere. Actually, it's like going in a time machine, like back 5,000 years, where you can actually be aware of these things. So we're so fortunate. It's just it boggles the mind to think of how far away we are from the ordinary society atmosphere versus the atmosphere we're reading about here and the atmosphere I encountered when we hit that demarcation line, when we passed into Vrindavan.
Well, now that you mention that, I was just going through some of my letters from Tamal Krishna Goswami. I'm going to be sending them to Garuda Prabhu. And one of the letters, I had asked Gurudev a is it that a devotee doesn't want, at the same time wants to stay in may want to stay in the material world and preach, or may want to go back to God? And how is that? How could a devotee how could they want both? And then Gurudev explained that as you get more and more Krishna conscious, you don't have to leave your body to go to the spiritual world. That you'll see Krishna everywhere. You'll see Vrindavan. You'll see the spirit. You'll see it in your daily activities. And sometimes I see that when I'm driving down the road. I look around and I just see all these living entities with super soul in their hearts. And then I think about rock talk, and maybe I need to turn that radio up so all these trees and everybody can hear the holy name, And then this spring, it was so much like Vrindavan around here. It just reminded me of Vrindavan because of the flowers blooming and the birds and the very mild weather, and it just felt like a little piece of Vrindavan here. So anyway, it was a nice letter that I read.
Well, I think because we're engaging in studying Krishna and talking about his pastimes and reading Krishna Book, the atmosphere is becoming more transcendental.
Yeah.
It's supposed to.
That's right.
That's the way it seems to be working. More pleasurable and more transcendental. Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Should we keep reading? Should we have a kirtan? It's a little bit early still.
What time is it?
It's almost 8. We could have maybe a kirtan or prashadam.
Yeah.
Or this next story looks really short. It's only 1.5 pages. Am I on the right page?
Page 134.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Okay. Devouring the forest fire. While Krishna and Balaram and their friends were engaged in the pastimes described above, the cows, being unobserved, began to wander off on their own, entering farther and farther into the deepest part of the forest, allured by fresh grasses. The goats, cows, and buffalo traveled from one forest to another and entered the forest known as Ishikatavi. This forest was full of green grass, and therefore they were allured. But when they entered, they saw that there was a forest fire, and they began to cry. On the other side, Balaram and Krishna, along with their friends, could not find their animals, and they became very aggrieved. They began to trace the cows by following their footprints, as well as the path of eaten grass. All the boys were fearing that their very means of livelihood, the cows, were now lost. Soon, however, they heard the crying of their cows. Krishna began to call the cows by their respective names with great noise. Upon hearing Krishna calling, the cows immediately replied with joy, but by this time the forest fire surrounded all of them, and the situation appeared to be very fearful. The flames increased as the wind blew very quickly, and it appears that everything movable and immovable would be devoured. All the cows and the boys became very frightened, and they looked towards Krishna, toward Balaram, the way a dying man looks at the picture of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They said, "Dear Krishna and Balaram, we are now burning from the heat of this blazing fire. Let us take shelter of your lotus feet. We know you can protect us from this great danger. Our dear Krishna, our dear friend Krishna, we are your intimate friends. It is not right that we should suffer in this way. We are all completely dependent on you, and you are the knower of all religious life. We do not know anyone except you." The Personality of God had heard the appealing voices of his friends, and casting a pleasing glance over them, he began to answer by speaking through his eyes. He impressed his friends that there was no cause for fear. Then Krishna, the Supreme Mystic, the powerful Personality of Godhead, immediately swallowed up all the flames of the fire. The cows and boys were thus saved from imminent danger. Out of fear, the boys were almost unconscious, but when they regained their consciousness and opened their eyes, they saw that they were again in the forest with Krishna, Balaram, and the cows. They were astonished to see that they were completely free from the attack of the blazing fire, and the cows were saved. They secretly thought that Krishna must not be an ordinary boy, but some demigod. In the evening, Krishna and Balaram, along with the boys and cows, returned to Vrindavan, playing their flutes. As they approached the village, all the gopis became very joyous. Throughout the day, the gopis used to think of Krishna while he was in the forest. And in his absence, they were considering one moment to be like 12 years. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport for the 19th chapter of Krishna, devouring the forest fire.
Okay, yeah, the next chapter is really long, but maybe we can have a little kirtan and I'll make the plates. Or if you, unless there's discussion, there may be a discussion about that.
There's not much discussion this evening.
No, I was worried. I didn't know if we were going to have this. I'm glad everyone came. Maybe Rupanuga Prabhu, would you like to lead a little kirtan?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mother Meena, you want to play the Vedanta?
Okay.
All right. Which chapter did we leave off on? 19?
Autumn.
So the next one is 20, yeah?
Autumn.
Yeah, okay.
What do you do?
Krishna.
I'm not much of a Madonna player, but the little old lady tic-tac. Is there anybody else that would like to play?
I think you may be the only one.
I'll play.
You play? All right.
Oh, I can play a little bit.
Harmonium?
Nothing special, but
You're doing that.
give it a try.
You're on fire tonight, so.
How do you want to play the harmonium?
Alachua, would you like to play Renanda though?
No.
Or Ragda?
No.
I mean, I'm not that good at it, but I'll try.
Better than me, I'm sure.
You think the little old lady didn't have to do enough?
It gets me by.
Bear with me.
I think Mother Meena's better than Juggernaut, but I'll say it with you.
Krishna.
Mao Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Rupe Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Rupe Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prasarine Nirvishesha Janyavadi Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prasarine Nirvishesha Janyavadi Vajrayani Sakarine Vishnu Krishna Namaste Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namane Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Rupe Srimati Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, His Divine Grace, Sri AC Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, He
Jai.
Prabhupada, He
Jai.
I'm Paramahansa Paribhajakachaja, Ashram.
Because I'll tell you what Bhagavatam is. Okay. Everybody wants to know. Everything.
It would be good to hear it.
It's a very interesting story.
We need one more chair. Do you mind